The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Humanity First. We have a few minutes with Chris Ryan, our regular guest and political pundit and radio star from New Hampshire. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Peter, great to see you as always.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week in politics, I would think. And, I was thinking before on the way over about the greatest threat to democracy. And I think the greatest threat to democracy is this sort of indifference that is sort of waving over America in some parts anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this notion of us ending up, it looks like, with a race that we've done before. And therefore you get the mix of indifference and cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
How do we overcome that, given what we've got coming at us in the next few months? And do you think that is a threat to democracy?
Oh, I think it's by far the biggest threat to democracy that we have, because you couple that with folks that are extremely motivated on the fringe, and they're very much, controlling the dialogue, and to a large extent, the policy, not just at the national level, but the state and the local level as well. And it's one of the major problems that we have is a disengaged electorate. And you wonder if they've been disengaged intentionally by the powers that be, or if it, is just a byproduct of a lot of the negativity that we have seen. But I was having a conversation with a couple of people this morning about how political figures just don't engage in environments that pose any threat to them at this point in time. And those include taking questions, doing town hall meetings, going into media environments that are not just insanely friendly. And we're moving to a place where folks, political figures, national, local, are just going to engage in settings in which they have very favorable questions and questioners, or they're going to produce just their own social media content. And that's going to be the only way they communicate with voters. And so far, we have seen that that's okay. I mean, Donald Trump, Joe Biden have not really engaged at all in this campaign process. Biden, during his presidency, has done a record low number of press conferences, doesn't do interviews. And Donald Trump basically, forewent the entire, if that's a word, primary process, other than doing town hall meetings or interviews with the most favorable questioners imaginable. And if voters don't demand access, they don't demand that political figures do as they wish. The only folks that will influence those political figures are the loudest voices and the lobbyists.
Right, and those who shout loudest are the biggest voices in the room, and people tend to migrate, I think, sometimes to those ideas. That's reflected all the way through society, right? These echo chambers of agreement, which I think are also very difficult to come to terms with. And you talk to people on either side of the debate, and it's like, well, I don't talk to people who don't agree with me. There's just no point. I'm not going to change their minds. Very different, perhaps, from the 1980s. When you had Tip O'Neill and Reagan coming together to.
And why do you think they came together? Because they were demanded to do so by their voters and by the people.
Right.
And so, I think that, political figures are largely driven by two things, voters and money. And the money, very often the donations, are to get to the voters and to win elections. So those things, what happened in the 80s and what's happening now are direct correlations to what you talked about in the beginning, where voters are, we could complain about that 70% of Americans don't want this, but they're kind of getting what they deserve if you're not going to engage.
Yeah, one thing that really does worry me is certain parts of the electorate. It seems that there are efforts to make it more difficult for them to vote. Mm-hmm. And that does seem to be a threat to democracy, along with some of the things that the candidates are saying, one particular candidate anyway, around sort of shaking the belief in democracy of our country. And that seems to be okay. How is that?
Yeah, on that as well. I mean, there were folks that were displeased with the Supreme Court decision that Donald Trump was constitutionally eligible and responded with the court system is broken. It shouldn't exist. We should appoint. So there's on both sides, there's kind of this, you could say who's to blame, but there's this push and pull in regard to what democracy should look like and should it be a reflection of the individual party's beliefs or what's best for the country and for democracy itself. But yeah, I think that we're in a place right now where there's significant questions about disenfranchisement, whether it's intentional or unintentional, and whether or not there is going to be significant change that's going to come as a result of this election in a negative sense.
Well, I think it'll play out in the end, but I think we have a rough road of it because of what you said at the beginning. There are extreme ideas that seem to be filling the entire political process at the moment. Chris, it's always good to have you in for a couple of minutes to talk about what's going on. And our next guest is going to be Rep. Rita Mendes, who is new to the political process in terms that she was elected in her first term recently. So maybe we'll ask her some of those questions. Chris, thanks so much.
Sounds good. Great to see you.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm an essential worker here at BAMSI, and I'm a nurse. Nurses are essential here at BAMSI because as nurses, we really have the opportunity to make an impact. We have very small ratios, so we have the opportunity to really learn everything about the person served and be able to give the best care. It really serves such a great purpose for me as being a nurse and really why I came into nursing. Learn more about nursing opportunities at bamsijobs.org.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Welcome back, everybody, to Humanity First. My name is Peter Evers, and as I promised in the first part of the show, we have Representative Rita Mendes with us. Welcome.
Thank you. It's my first time here, and I'm so excited to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. And congratulations on your transition from the City Council to the State House. How has that been? I'm always interested in people's motivation and the bravery that people are displaying, in your case, in terms of running in a very, very difficult political climate. I don't remember a time when there's been so much cynicism, and as we were talking in the first part of the show, and concern about our democracy. What was it that made you want to do this?
And that's a great question, because it is in the environment that people, they look at you like, what are you doing? Why are you getting involved in politics? Why does it matter? Why don't you just give up and not do anything? Because anything that you do, it seems like it's not going to matter. But I've got so much from the city of Brockton, from this country, coming as an immigrant, not speaking the language and going through all that. And then when I became an attorney, I started practicing immigration because my passion was immigration law, obviously, because I went through the process of getting your papers. And right when I first started practicing immigration, I got my license in 2017. 2018 started my practice. It was during the Trump years. So I feel like I was tested by fire because I had a president that his ultimate goal was to really deport everybody. So the judges that were coming on the benches, they were really not respecting people's due process and their rights and just wanted to deport everybody. So it was really intense, and that training. And then I felt I really need to do something about this. Even if it's in the local level, I need to give voice to the community that I represent, that a majority immigrant population. A lot of them don't speak English that proper, and they need to have that voice in places where differences can be made. So even if it's a small difference, just giving that voice, giving that access to my community, it makes a difference. And that is really what motivates me to push myself further, get out of the comfort zone. I'm really introvert, so I'm not the type that you would ever think in school that I would become today, a state representative. So if I did it, trust me, anybody can do it.
Well, I was thinking about this because if you looked at a picture of who was in the House of Reps in Massachusetts or anywhere, say 50 years ago, all of those people would look like me, right? And they would all be white males. And now we look at an America that looks very different, right? So why shouldn't all of those groups have representation. And that maybe dispels some of the cynicism that is around, that we are changing the face of our legislature, and you are a perfect example of that. So thank you for being brave enough to run in a pretty mean time. I know that's sort of a childish word, but sometimes there's a lot of meanness out there, and division around how people think about these issues, and the work that you're doing is incredibly important. I have worked in Brockton on and off for 35 years, so I think it's 34, and pretty familiar with the politics and with Brockton as a city. I've always seen Brockton as a gateway city, somewhere where you can come as a new American and settle and begin to build a life. I worry about that a little bit at the moment, because housing is really expensive, and we've said on the show before that in a 2.5-year period, housing went in 2019. The average house was, I think, 325,000, and now it's around about 425,000. It's really expensive to live in Brockton. There are things going on that Brockton has been labeled for, if you ask me. But what we don't hear enough about what's good about Brockton. What's going on that we can celebrate as Boston?
And it's such a great question, because just this past week I had the Brockton art work, the kids in the artwork. So they displayed their artwork at the State House. So I brought them in, and then they had their display, their beautiful painting, and that was at the State House for a whole week. And when I read the paper about it, I guess it was just a line that said, oh, by the way, their artwork was presented at the State House for a full week. So we have the music program, the band. We really have so many talented kids at the Brockton High School. I'm a product of the Brockton High School because I graduated from Brockton High. And I went to law school, and I became an attorney, and I have my law practice. So there's really a lot of kids there that really want to go, and they want to learn. They want to thrive in their lives. In our job, especially as elected officials, to make sure that we provide them the tools to succeed. If we are in America, our job is to educate our kids. It's really making sure that they get the best education. So whatever it is that they wanted to do in their lives, they'll be able to really have that education. So I've been doing tours at the schools, and I talk directly to the kids, because when you go, they usually just think that you just walk in the halls and just observe it. And I said, no, I want to go in the classrooms, and I want to share my story, and I want to tell them, I, like you, am also an immigrant. I, like you, also arrived in this country without knowing the language, and it is possible to achieve that American dream and to achieve greatness and to be better and to do better in your lives. And I think there's so much potential there, and we are just focusing on a very small group of kids. And that is just unfortunate. But we know the city of Brockton is a city of champions, and the kids are really amazing.
It is. And that idea about needing to be able to look up and see somebody who looks like them in positions of authority, in positions of leadership, in political positions where, the voice can be carried into the debate and actually make change in the political environment, which is very difficult. Probably a controversial subject, but I was thinking about this the other day about the high school, because I know the high school very well. One of my very good friends taught there for 25 years in special ed math. You might actually know him, but retired recently. And he spoke about nothing but good about his years at Brockton High School, about the music program, about academic programs, about kids who are matriculating through to high quality universities. What worries me a little bit, Rita Mendes, is that we don't hear too many of those stories. And the focus, especially right now, is this whole business about the National Guard coming in. And the news outlets in Boston don't really want to talk about anything except the negative. I wonder how you feel as a Brocktonian, as somebody who's benefited from the system, when you don't hear the good things and you hear very sort of high-level, superficial stories. A great example is Monday night. There was a scuffle at the school, and a teacher got hurt, and that's a terrible thing. But would that? I'm sure there were scuffles in, in Dover. I'm sure there were scuffles in any place you want to look, Western, but they didn't get on the television that night. How do you feel about that? Because it really bothers me.
Yes, and it's our job to, as Brocktonians, as elected officials, as people that really love the city of Brockton, to spread that message, to spread that positive message. Because if we are going to rely on the media, that is the message that they're going to be sending out. And then when we arrived at the State House and your colleagues look at you and say, I am so sorry, what is happening in the city of Brockton? They also concerned is like, is everything okay? Do you need any assistance? So it's really being magnified such a level that people probably think that we are at war, that we need the National Guards, that things in the big chaos. And when you go to the schools and you walk and you talk to the kids, you do see that there's so much potential there. So it's very unfortunate. It's the biggest high school, obviously, in the state, one of the biggest in the country. It's about 3,600 kids in that high school, and 80% are kids of color. They are minority. Their parents, they have 2-3 jobs. Right. And the kids are arriving at a huge level. Just in December and January, we had an additional 400 children that came to the school system. And the governor, the grants, the money that we received for each child is counted as of October 1st. But if they come into the school system after that date, then it becomes an issue. So we do need to be advocating for more money. We're looking into that funding for our schools and making sure we have teachers, we have educators, we have mentors, we have guidance counselors, we have people that really to be guiding those kids and letting them know, because the kids are concerned too. Should I be afraid to go to school? Right. What is going on? Why is my high school on the news all the time? Mm. And there are other kids that like the attention. They're like, we're becoming famous. So I think it's almost like a play fight that they just, they're kids and they're being kids and they're getting all this attention. So it happens more and more because they see it's working. And so we really need to be watching, because we could lose a whole generation of kids. A lot of kids, they probably just skip school or decide to just not go back to school, be like, it's worthless. Why am I putting myself through this? We cannot give up on this generation. We can't give up on our kids. And we need to make sure they're getting the education that they need to get. And it is concerning, the message that it's out there, but it's also our job to stay positive and to fight back with the positive and show the amazing examples that we have, the straight A students, the honor rolls, and the ones that are getting to elite colleges, and just keep on going and pushing that forward. And that's the only way. Just keep positive. And that's my goal, is to really keep positive. And every time something's bad, negative about Brockton High, we'll fight back with lots of positive, because that's what it is. The community coming together and staying together and fighting together and being positive about all of this.
Yeah. And I'm sure you hear those positive stories every day. What's going on at the moment with you in terms of what are you supporting? What are you advocating for down there in Boston?
Yes, there's several different issues that are going on, and especially in the city of Brockton. And then when it occurs in the city of Brockton, those are the things that we are actively working on. The Stewart Hospital situation, that's a big one. We've had a tour with Congressman Lynch at the Good Sam Hospital, and we also, Ed Markey just was here in Brockton as well for another tour. So we're working very closely. We're monitoring, especially the fact that the Brockton High School is Hospital is still closed. So we really need 2 hospitals in the city of Brockton. We only have one, and that one that we have, it's also these negative news and the stories that we're hearing. So we're working very closely on that issue. So that's been with also Brockton Neighborhood Health Center. For the first time ever, they now have a waiting period for people to be able to get a primary care doctor. So we're trying to bring them more resources and more funding. Brockton really needs help right now from the state and the federal delegation. So we're also bringing the federal delegation there and saying We need the help. We need the assistance. We're willing to work with the community, but we want to make sure that healthcare is not delayed because people feel they don't have a place to go. So that's huge. We want to make sure that people have access to healthcare, and that's what we're really working on.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because we are going to be chatting again on, I think, March 21st, when we're holding a symposium at Bridgewater State University, which is actually talking about disparities in healthcare, something I care very deeply about, and something that really is unfolding in our community for lots of different reasons. And that conversation really is key when we think about a country which really was founded on the idea of equity. Now we know it wasn't really, but it was that everybody had a chance, and everybody was seen as an equal in American society. And if we're not doing that relative to education and medicine and giving everybody the same opportunity to be well, then I think we have to question ourselves, right? That's something I think as a society we have to pay a great deal of attention to. And there are communities where that settles more than other places. And Brockton is one of those places because we celebrate the diversity of this community. We celebrate the fact that people can begin a life as a new American in Brockton. But we really need some help in making sure that those equities are preserved. And I thank you for continuing to sort of push on that issue around education and health. I think those are the two most important things. Anything else in terms of bills, anything that you're really supporting and getting behind?
Yes. So we do have also another huge issue because we want to make sure we keep jobs in the city of Brockton. So now the U.S. the Postal Service, they put in the processing center. They're moving it. They're in the public hearings right now to Rhode Island, to Providence. So that's been a big concern in the community because that will move jobs to Rhode Island, a lot of jobs, and then it will also delay our mail. So that is been something that we're working with the unions and we're working with the community. We're in the process for public hearings and public comments and accepting letters, and hopefully everybody is completely against it because we want to make sure we keep our mail in Brockton. So that's been a huge issue that we're fighting. And another bill that I am co-sponsoring too and working very closely is in regarding to teachers diversity. We want to make sure that when layoff comes, unfortunately, especially in a city like Brockton, layoffs sometimes is inevitable, that we are prioritizing the teachers that speak the language of the community, that are teachers of color, the minorities, because we want to make sure that the kids can see themselves being also successful and being educated by those that look like them. So we want to make sure that we keep that diversity in education. And that's been a conversation that it's not always easy to have because we know we got so many qualified and amazing teachers and educators. We want to keep them in our classrooms. We want to keep them educating our kids, but we want to make sure that they are culturally understanding too of our community and the issues and the struggles that our kids goes through. And I think that makes a huge difference. So.
Yeah, and when you think about, working with unions who I support very much, but, the longer term people are the people that have tenure, and it's the people who haven't been here that long who are the first out. And oftentimes those are, people who are bilingual, bicultural. So that's a tough nut to crack. It really is. I was thinking as we wrap up, being a representative of a great number of people, you have to listen to so many issues, and it must be a little bit overwhelming sometimes when you've got sort of, the bicycle repair people coming in wanting a bill about something, or plumbers coming in, or mental health issues, which of course we're very interested in. But I remember one time when I was working for the state, and the Department of Youth Services person said, I've got to choose between dental care for these kids and mental health. I don't know. I've got to make one choice or the other. fighting for resources for everyone is a very busy job, Rep Mendes, and I really appreciate everything that you've done and will do in the future. So thank you so much for coming on. Maybe you can come on again in a few months, and we can maybe after the election, and we can talk about what the political landscape looks like then.
Anytime. Love to come back. And thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do for the city of Brockton. It's really impressive, and you guys do absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.